ideally, if that level of job and income could be replaced.
A very quick example of how that may be the case
is going to make it easier to disrupt a major, entrenched position like OpenAI's.
Google's actually going to start showing ads in AI overviews.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 4th, 2024. You're listening, watching the Daily AI Show live, and today is what we call our biweekly recap show. And what does that mean? That means we get a chance to pause, look back at the last, basically 9 shows that we've done, and talk and dive into some more of those topics, because stuff always comes up with AI. You never really have to worry about AI having some new concepts, talk, news, or otherwise coming up. And with me today, we actually have almost a full house, which is super awesome. We have Jyunmi, Beth, Karl, Andy, and Eran, which I'm very happy to see. I'm Brian. Eran, good to see you, buddy. Glad you could hang out with us today. We miss you, but happy you're here with us. So today, I'm going to put this up on the stage as I typically do every other Friday, and just have a quick reminder of all the things we did talk about. So this is episode 304, or excuse me, this is 305. 304 was yesterday. And so if we go back 2 weeks, which is when we do these shows, it goes all the way back down here to, well, if I hover over, we're going to see Beth. But if you look at it, it's DIY with your apps. We talked about virtual worlds and digital twins, and actually had somebody message me on LinkedIn about that, which was super cool about that show specifically. Obviously, we did news. We talked about multimodal RAG. I wasn't here for that one, but that was a great show. You could see one of our more popular shows was talking about Q4 predictions for 2024, because we didn't want to just start looking into 2025 yet. We wanted to say, hey, what do we think is coming in 2024? And I think we have an OpenAI story that would probably directly relate to that. So what is going on with OpenAI? They've had a lot of shifting, a lot of stuff going on in OpenAI. They've had more news and October releases, which we can get into. One of those specifically can definitely relate to AI boosting efficiency with what came out yesterday. And then yesterday we were talking about AI crime solving, and we talked even a little bit, we got into like maybe the predictive level of crime and how AI might play a little bit of that minority report feel to it. So lots to discuss over the last 2 weeks. It always just feels like, a ton of conversations, but as always, let me kind of jump in here. Who has one right off the bat? I know we probably want to talk about Canvas from OpenAI, but is there anything else people want to jump into right away? Karl, go for it.
I do. And it was one I wanted to bring up on Wednesday. So I think it's kind of resolved now, but it was the Longshoremen and their strike. I think it went to day 3, and then I believe the wages were negotiated. So they're going back to work, but it wasn't the wages necessarily that I was looking at. It was the part of their bargaining where they wanted to ban automations. And so they as you know, like, it's a pretty dangerous job, right? Like, there's some room for error, right? If you get the cargo container, if it falls on you, like, there's like heavy equipment and so on. So, and I was listening to, I can't remember a podcast yesterday where this happened actually 1971, where they did a strike, but part of it was on containerization, where the longshoremen would, take off all the goods off a boat, but now it would be containers. So I think it was an interesting battle that I thought would have gone a little bit longer, but surprised that they obviously got, and that's great because it's, people get back to work, but also the economy moves with the things shipped. And I don't know if you actually heard it went viral. I think their union boss, I can't remember his name. He went viral and saying this is what we're going to do. And in week 1, this is what's going to happen. Week 2, car salesmen will lose their jobs because there won't be any cars. Week 3, there'll be stores will be shutting down because there'll be no products coming in. So, but I think that it's an interesting fight from 1971 to here because of the automation. And if you think about it from a business perspective too, well, wouldn't it be easier if a lot of that work was automated? And the one last thing I wanted to point out was the same union. I can't remember his name. I really want to say it. he wrote I think an op-ed last week, and he blasted EasyPass. Now, I don't know what EasyPass is, but from what I read, it was instead of somebody sitting, I think, at a toll booth collecting money, it's an EasyPass. You just go.
Yep.
And he said he hates the EasyPass because people forgot about the union worker who did that job. But then the response to that is like, well, people want more efficiency. So why would we care when instead of having long lineups to pay, we can just, our cars can go through. So again, like a very fascinating, like just turn of events, his thoughts were, and if that automation, I think it's inevitable, people will lose their jobs. And it's automation. There's a bit of AI into it too. So I thought that was a really fascinating news story that I thought would go longer, but seems like it's resolved.
Yeah, I mean, in Florida, I mean, Karl, like and in Georgia and all other parts of the country, in the States at least, in Florida, though, we have toll roads everywhere. And since I've lived here in Florida since 2008, certainly up near Beth, I'm sure out in California as well on the West Coast. But since 2008, they've done away with, I'd say 90% of the toll booths because automation got to the point where the cameras were sophisticated enough to get good pictures of the back and front of the plates and all those kind of things. And so now even just 3 miles down the road from me, I have a major turnpike that we use all the time. And it's called SunPass. That's what it's called here. It's called Peach Pass up in Georgia and other places. And they're also interconnected. So I can use Peach Pass when I'm in Georgia. It also works with SunPass down here. Easy Pass is one of the larger conglomerates of that as well. So yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I used to have to stop at a toll booth. You used to have to throw the change in, you had to try to make the shot, put the 2 quarters in there and get on your way. You had to travel everywhere. When I was in college, everywhere you went in Florida, you had to travel with a big old change, bin because you had to have money to get through the tolls. And now there's literally no stopping. You never slow down. I mean, there's still some places where you go through the toll booths and you have to slow down just to go through them, but they're not operational because everything now is done through cameras, automation, even all the way through renting cars. So it used to be with rental cars, that was a holdout, right? Well, now what they do is if you rent a car, when I had my big kerfuffle coming back from Europe and I had to drive from basically Beth's house back to mine, not really Beth's house, but that area. And it was a 17-hour ride. I just breezed on through all the toll booths. After the fact, I got served a bill that said, hey, here's all the tolls you went through and you owe us. Hertz Rent-A-Car is like, hey, you owe us for this. But even in a rental car, I didn't have to stop. So anyway, just wanted to bring that part up, but also what you're saying about automation. I saw one of the TikTok videos of a guy sitting up in the crane over one of the ports. And he was like, look down there. There's no people. He said, that's all automation. And it was, containers moving and stuff. He said, there's nobody down there. He said, that's all automation. This is what we're fighting against. This is taking the jobs of the longshoremen and stuff like that. So I certainly understand it, but it's directly in the face of progress and efficiency. And I ultimately do not believe they would win out any more so than people who work at Amazon whose jobs are being automated through the robots on the floor and these kind of things. So
I would think that Jyunmi, because there was a lot of talk between that and the connection to SAG-AFTRA and what does that mean, right? Because that's just a different type of automation. And, what does that kind of, I don't know.
We'll find out in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because the deal was only for 3. The contract for us was 3. So we'll see what happens after 2 years. California law did change. So there's a little more protections on that side of things for Hollywood specifically because they put in a requirement for producers to have direct consent from actors before they're put into things. So it's been settled a little bit in that direction, but yeah, automation is going to be, I think, in a general sense, a more hot button issue for people. It comes from the needs of the masses or the consumer saying, yes, we just want it easy and consistent and a stronger supply chain versus, yes, we understand that there are people involved doing these jobs. And Longshoremen, I don't know if I can speak for anybody else in Hawaii, but the whole shipping industry in Hawaii that's always been a hot button issue because it is responsible for 99% of all goods in the state is through shipping.
Sure.
And, there's been arguments of, things are coming from the East. Why does it have to go to San Diego first? So why do we have to pay the premium of shipping going to San Diego, then coming to Hawaii? We're on the way. Why do we have to meet these other requirements for going, that stack on additional taxes and costs? It's one of the reasons why you pay for, a $10 gallon of milk in Hawaii. So this is a hot button issue, and I think we'll be discussing it for quite a while, and in an accelerated pace because of these improvements in AI and automation as a whole.
Well, and for the longshoreman job, ideally, if that level of job and income could be replaced for people, and they could be retrained for something that is slightly safer, that might be a good move sort of all around, right? Because part of this is that if the robot gets broken because it's lifting something that's way too freaking heavy, those parts can be replaced. Or the new robot, right? Part of the efficiency in this is the inefficiency of human bodies with the kinds of things that we need to do. And the last news that I saw is that there's a tentative agreement and the strike was suspended for until January 15th. So it's not fully resolved, but it is resolved enough that they're coming back to the table, and there's a tentative agreement for that.
Yeah, and what I saw here on CNBC is that they were asking for, among other things, I'm sure, but an increase of $5 per hour for each year of the 6-year contract. That's either they're highly underpaid, or that is. I would love to have those right. I would like to be paid $5 more every year for the next 6 years per hour. That means a wage increase of 61% over the 6 years under the tentative agreement. I do not see anything here, though, at least in CNBC One, specifically about automation or AI. It's just talking about it being suspended, as you just said, that there was already rising costs. So we were already, even like the 3 or 4 days that it lasted, we were already seeing the effects of this as the rep was saying, and that it's suspended. So yeah, really interesting there, but certainly not the first or last. And it's, AI and automation is going to touch all the other industries. Think of something like offshore drilling, widely considered to be one of the most dangerous jobs. A lot of people, get hurt, lose limbs, lose lives on those platforms. How much of that is going to go away, as you said, Beth, because of the inefficiency.
Robotics is coming for your job, people.
What was that, Eran? Sorry?
Boston Robotics is coming for your job.
Yeah, well, yeah. Those types of jobs, sure. Yeah, if it's saving lives, but it's also it's making it safer, but it's also pushing people out of their livelihoods and their career, which I totally understand. Okay, let's pivot here. I think Jyunmi, actually, you were about to when Karl said that. So what was something, story or from the last 2 weeks that you wanted to bring back?
I think this came out just after our news episode, but OpenAI officially got a $6.6 billion raise. So not quite the 7 that Sam was hoping for, but I think the difference is not going to be that big of a difference for them. I think this is a big indicator of their future plans. But I've already started to hear the rumor mill talking about this is still not enough for their grand plans. So maybe OpenAI will be the rise of the yearly $1 billion raise. I don't know, but I think it's significant enough to mention that they did get that, and it's one of the largest raises that I think they've had.
Isn't it the largest raise? Isn't it?
I think so. I think so. I didn't verify that, but
they also got a $4 billion line of credit or whatever else on top of that. So it's they have cash to burn. But there was one. I I heard it from somewhere where like, if they start wanting to get into developing nuclear reactors, 6.6 billion means nothing, where you need like $100 billion land to actually land. And so I don't know how that's gonna come into like who I don't know very like outside of probably the Middle East, the Saudis, probably very few would have.
Well, you're definitely talking about the sovereignty fundraising level, right? It's like, it's nations now. We only talk to nations because they're the only ones who can put the tens of billions together that we need.
Okay. Hundreds of billions, not tens. Hundreds of billions.
By the way, Axios says yes. I did a quick Google search. Yes, largest venture capital deal of all time, which values the company at $157 billion. So that's where they currently stand on that.
Yeah, they remember unicorns, 1 billion. Oh, like chump change. Who cares about that?
It's money out quickly with AI. What was that?
Speaking of nuclear reactors, I think I read somewhere the other day that you guys may have discussed this in the previous show, but apparently Microsoft's done a deal or in the process of doing a deal with the 3 Mile Island reactor to supply power. So there's the first step.
Yeah, no, we've definitely talked about like AI and nuclear energy and how those things are becoming more and more intertwined because of the needs of data centers, new data centers, all that. So yeah, that's the nuclear energy and 3 Mile Island one. I don't know, kind of floored me. I also get really I like to nerd out on the smaller nuclear reactors, which we talked about on probably in the last 2 weeks actually, that are much smaller. And by smaller, I mean just not the size of 3 Mile Island, right? They take up an acre versus whatever. So they're not like in a box on your desk, but nonetheless, they're super cool on there. I do want to talk really quick because we just talked about OpenAI. I mean, it is worth mentioning, although I will say we are going to for sure talk more about Dev Day and also Canvas, which literally came out yesterday. Next week, we have a show on that. But the reason I want to bring up Canvas is mainly because from our show on efficiency. So we talked about like, does AI really impact efficiency? And I think this is yet another example of a very quick example of how that may be the case. So I just want to throw this up on the screen. We don't have the deep dive or anything into Canvas unless you guys want to. There's a really easy way that you can see this. So Canvas, if you don't know, looks a little bit like artifacts from Claude, which we've all loved here for the last couple of months, where now basically you get your, if it makes sense to do this, you will get your chat on the left, and it will sort of build a document. It will also do things with code. In this particular use case, it's about writing and content. But in this case, what I did was I actually took one of my custom GPT prompts that we actually sell and give access to in that way. So I'm not going to show the prompt itself. But what I did was I literally used that prompt and just put it bare bones into a chat, right? Which works basically the same thing. It's just like a super prompt at this point. So what I did was what this particular, this custom GPT, or in this case prompt, does is it marries, if I want to book a meeting with somebody. So it'll take the known pain points of a job title at a specific company. In this case, Scooter's Coffee. Okay, that's the one that's just an example. And then what it does is it marries that with the value props from the company that I would work with. But in this case, we're using a digital marketing agency called Rupert. I have to look at the name of it as an example. So we have something that creates snippets. What are snippets for us in at least the sales side? And we don't necessarily want to create full-blown emails right away. We want to create sort of the outlines first, and we call those just snippets. I know snippets are used in other tools as well. So here's a good like example of a snippet, right? Where it's assigned the pain point. So title, franchise empowerment through tailored marketing support. Pain point is Scooter's Coffee franchisees need effective local marketing that aligns with brand identity. Then we have a value prop of how ruckus, that's the name of the company. Then I always have in there like deeper connections. And then we have talking points that might give you an idea, give that sales rep who would be using this. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is efficiency is that's great, but that's like already what the custom GPT does. Where this has some benefits though, is on the right-hand side at the bottom, I really feel like some of these tools are going to be super helpful for efficiency. Because now that it's neatly written on the right-hand side, as you can see it highlighted here, what I did was I basically said, suggest edits. And it immediately comes up in yellow, puts it in yellow and says, okay, well, here, this paragraph could be improved by highlighting the particular challenge the franchises face and how the tailored support would directly address that. And all I have to do is hit apply, and this prompt now is going to rewrite it, and we're going to see that it actually gets fixed live on the right-hand side. That's a huge, just tiny, but huge efficiency gain for somebody like a sales rep who's going to be using a tool like this to get basically, not only is it giving you the feedback and the snippets, but now it's saying, hey, I think there's ways we could actually make this better based on all the research that was done at the top for this prompt. So just wanted to bring that up. I know we're going to dive deeper into Canvas. Wanted to get your guys like maybe initial feedback on that or initial thoughts about what you've seen. It's been less than 24 hours. But right away, I can see this as a huge improvement as an efficiency tool within ChatGPT. So bravo to them for releasing this.
I want to
example of. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, the point a quick point I want to make is, if you look at Copilot and Google Workspace, right? Or any kind of tool, they want to bring AI into their current tool. This is interesting where the AI wants to bring the productivity tools into AI. So I'm curious to know what happens to Microsoft Copilot. Be like, why would I want to pay $20, $38, whatever it is, when technically Excel, I have I forgot whatever the name they have today, Advanced Analytics, and then Word, why would I want to pay for that when I can do everything in Canvas? And then I have DALL-E for presentations. It's not very hard for them to start putting in, they've got a WYSIWYG. So the first thing I said to Jyunmi is like, hey, the moment I can start playing videos in this thing, it lights out. So what does that is, to me, is a fundamental shift. And I wonder what Microsoft is thinking right now.
I'm just waiting for them to put in the basic ingestion and export, right? So they've got where you can upload from your computer, upload from your drive, your OneDrive, things like that. But if this interface gets an easy way of saying, just connect, I can move the files back and forth real easily, then yeah, I'll be more prone to stay in this. If I'm already developing or I'm already working with chat, and then I just move over, I have Canva, to finalize it, do that last 10 or 20%, and then spit it out to whatever my existing infrastructure is or my company's infrastructure. Easy peasy. I'll spend more time in ChatGPT.
The same thing with Cursor. Yeah. What point do you serve? Because isn't that kind of what we're looking at here? So I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in our Dev Day episode.
Andy, what were you going to say?
Yeah, these are examples of advances in the usability of writing assistance and coding assistance, which are two really important areas of application in AI support of productivity. And I just want to refresh everybody's recollection that company Uplevel published a report this past week, and we discussed it briefly on the show, that indicated that at least the current GitHub Copilot type coding assistants, they were not demonstrating the 10x productivity improvements in coding that had been foretold. So but I believe that over time, and I've been around longer than all of you, so I see the time progression of these things, I think, with more clarity. Over time, we will arrive at a point where productivity gains are so extensive and so replacing the human's contribution to the process that we run into the problem that we were discussing with the Longshoremen and so on, where jobs are being lost. I know that I'm personally working with, the Replit agent process to try to build code without hiring an engineer. So I'm buying into the thesis that I will not have to hire a coding engineer to do that. Now, I believe that within, the next few, years during which I want to develop some of these products, I will have to have engineers step in and improve them because they're just not quite there yet. But the indications are that not only on the front of quality of initial code production, which is the problem area that the Uplevel study showed, because it was introducing 41% more bugs than a human engineer would for its initial code push, and which required humans to then go through and debug that, or it just degraded the immediacy of the availability of good code. Well, that's going to start to slip away. You're not going to see those bugs anymore because the models are learning constantly, and eventually get to the point where you can just say, here's what I want, and an agentic assistant is going to be able to not only do it themselves, but also call upon a wide range of other component assistants that can do the reviews and do the bug checking and all of that until it presents a UI and says, okay, now what enhancements do you want? Not what corrections do you need, but what enhancements do you need for this product? So productivity gains aren't being demonstrated yet, but I think Canvas is an indication that people are thinking deeply on the development side of the AI tools about what's required for me to have a useful UI to develop code and or develop better writing on that right-hand panel, and you can interact with it that way. And I also want to just finally say, let's try to disambiguate Canva, which is a very important product with AI, and Canvas. So damn you, OpenAI, once again putting out a term that is confusingly similar to already existing terms in the workspace.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad you said that, Andy, because that's one of my my first things was like, I think I even referred to it as Canva to myself, and I was like, oh no, Canvas. All right, So yeah, it's a little too close. But hey, on a bright side, they didn't call it agent something. So
No, they didn't.
That's a win.
And the hilarious, the trying to understand the story before I had actually seen the story. Like, okay, so Canva just swallowed Leonardo and like these other things. Did OpenAI just swallow Canva? Right? Like,
right,
no,
exactly.
No. It's a canvas. It's canvas, and then you can do things on the canvas. While we're still talking about OpenAI, there has come out a little bit more information about the people who are leaving and how many. And the Artificial Intelligence Show did a segment on this. They're from the Marketing AI Institute, Paul Raitzer. And one of the things that came out is that there were potentially some tensions in terms of personnel. And I had not counted, but Mira and Barrett and Bob, who were the people who had left right before our show, were that made 20 people who had left OpenAI this year. And it was just announced that Tom Brook, sorry, I will find his name. I had it, but now I don't, who was a Sora research lead, has just left to join Google DeepMind. And that's not enormously surprising given the announcement about Sora sort of needing to go back to the drawing board and create something, train something new. And it's Tim Brook is what I'm seeing. One of the ideas of that is what we talked about on the show, that there are tensions in growing an organization that was initially founded as a research arm to move toward AGI. That's still there. And there's this other part, right? And Sam has enormous experience in building organizations, but he also has sort of a trail of sometimes that's complicated for people. And so it often creates a turnover or a mix, or like, we don't want you in this situation, right? Those kinds of things. There's also some more information about Ilya, and that there was potentially an offer to Ilya initially to come back to the company, and then that was rescinded. So there's like that kind of stuff that's coming out a little bit more. And I know Karl is often at like saying, "Hey, that's speculation." These were sourced to the Wall Street Journal and the Atlantic, so that's why I'm referencing them. These are not all X vibes and hot takes, but I did definitely growing pains, right?
Can I make a quick prediction? At some stage, I think OpenAI will be just Sam with the AGIs in the background running everything else. All be gone and he'll control the whole damn thing.
Well, and the interesting part of this is whether OpenAI really has a moat, right? I mean, if the game is attention and money and power, now you're bringing back Google, right? And Microsoft and Apple and Meta.
I don't think OpenAI has a moat. They're really good at what they're producing right now, and it's at the front of the pack. But that's not to say Elon doubling his data centers, which he said,
Elon,
with Grok couldn't easily outpace it with compute alone. And we know that's only one part of like a three-legged stool, but who's to say? I think most people are still saying compute is ultimately the biggest indicator of what an LLM can do. So if you can win the race with compute, yeah, I mean, I think some of the moat disappears for OpenAI. Also, like, what is OpenAI's intention? Is it to get you to come in and for ChatGPT to be sticky, or some future version? Maybe they stop calling it ChatGPT because it does too many other things that ChatGPT no longer is a great name for it. So maybe they come out and they call it Morpheus or something like something like that, and they're like, no, this is our new program, Morpheus. You're like, what the hell's Morpheus? And they're like, well, Morpheus has ChatGPT in it, but it also does these 6 other things, and you still log in and you can do your Soras and your multimodals and all these other things, but now that's what OpenAI is doing. And I kind of expect maybe that's what they'll do for a one-stop shop. But back to Jyunmi, your point about like, I'm just waiting for them to connect out to other things. Case in point, Canvas. If I do my editing really quick in ChatGPT because I need that OpenAI, I need that AI thing, but if I knew that it was live updating or pushing to a Google Doc every 10 seconds as I was making updates, that would also be very, very cool, because then I could share that document and I wouldn't have to worry about resharing the document. It'd be like a live RAG going on where I could say, hey, to my teammates or whatever, I'm creating snippets, right? I'm creating these things and these talking points so that you guys can go out and do your outreach better, or with our customers or our clients that we do this for with sales. And hey, don't worry, client X, all you have to do is keep going to this Google Doc that we're sharing, and as I make it better, you will only ever see the most updated, best version of that. And yes, you can do that inside like an OpenAI Teams environment and things, but not nearly as easy. So I don't think they have.
There's one thing on that. Remember that the I think right now, and I'm not sure if this is a moat, but outside of the AI bubble, most people connect AI to ChatGPT. Again, yesterday with a prospect, they have no clue what the heck is that. Anthropic, I don't know what that is, and Google's like barely there, but everything right now is ChatGPT. So if you have that mind share, it reminds me back of when Google became Google. There's a whole bunch of search engines, but everyone made, just Google it, right? And that was, I don't know if they were the best search engine. Maybe they were, but there was a bunch of them. Bing, Yahoo, Ask Jeeves. Like, I think there was one that Web Crawler or whatever it was. There's a whole bunch of them. But I think like, if you have that, the mainstream, that is what everybody knows and only knows, especially if you have like younger generations just using that, then why would you switch? Compute, all that stuff kind of doesn't matter. Like, because you always hear, I'm switching to this and this. Like, you are, but like the majority of the world right now, though, there's only one thing that people know, and that's it. Like,
I'm going to push back on this, Karl. I think that could be eroded in less than 6 months. I think by June of 2025, we could easily be talking much more about Google or X or Grok or something like that than we are OpenAI. I think it could move that fast. Yes, they have a bit of a moat because they've had one of the best models, and they continue to push new innovations that are really industry leading. But if others catch up and are able to push at that level, I don't see why people would do it. I mean, my 13-year-old doesn't really know ChatGPT. She knows Poe. She's like, yeah, I don't throw whatever model you want in there. I don't care. My daughter could care. That's most people.
That's why, like, what is happening with Apple? Because if Apple had been able to meet that level of interaction, right? Even if you had to go to the cloud for it, it would be an entirely different conversation.
I'm not sure you can get that mind share shifted when the entrenchment is kind of a lot. And we're going out and even so for example, met with a regional health authority. The first thing they said is, hey, look, no open source. I was like, oh, okay. And the only things we're going to be using is ChatGPT, OpenAI, or Microsoft Azure. That's it. I was like, are you sure? They're like, no, that's it. It's like, I cannot recommend anything else. That's the path that you play in. And so that's why I was like, oh, okay. So when I hear that on ground, I don't know how you flip that. Like I feel like I'm hearing that and I'm like, damn, that's entrenched. Like I didn't have any room for argument. And that's like a government organization. So that's why I was like, oh, it's an interesting, I'm just relaying like what I'm hearing and listening to versus, oh, we can switch. I was like, there's some tools that are much better, but the entrenchment is more and more and more and more I don't know where is that point where like, I don't know anything else but this. So I don't know any other search tool but Google. So anyway, it's fascinating, but I could be wrong too and be like, oh, and we actually don't know if there's a new thing that none of these AI labs and this new thing comes out and be like, oh, it's better than everybody else. You just need a lot of money to do that.
If you look at the commercial business world, for example, set aside AI for a sec. What's the default standard for a lot of corporates and governments? And it's probably something like Microsoft, the Office 365 infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. And that's been like that for years. Yeah, good or bad is neither here nor there, but it's the default standard that most of them use and have used for 10 or 20 years. I do agree that things are something that's a real game changer, may switch that, but it's still a big ask for people to say, oh yeah, we'll go and try this no-name open source LLM because it's actually better than everyone else's. It take a lot of work to get the big guys to switch and change everything around.
I want to add a perspective on this. I think that the pace at which change is happening, driven by AI primarily, is going to make it easier to disrupt a major, entrenched position like OpenAI's. If you think about it, all of your work, Karl, at the application development level for your clients, you're building your stack in such a way that it's agnostic to which model is being used on the back end. And ultimately, you're going to find that, okay, they have trust in OpenAI right now, I think partly because Microsoft has put their blessing on it, right? So they're saying, look, we're in Microsoft shop, we want to do that. But the tools that you build, ultimately, they'll probably develop better comfort where something comes through that's disruptive, much better than what OpenAI's track has developed. But it's also possible that every one of these things is going to be parallel and at parity with each other. Because that's really another observation that we make, which is there's not a huge amount of difference between 4.0 and 3.5 Sonnet in terms of coding capabilities, right? Somebody in the chat stream I saw flow by there was saying, coding, I use Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and a lot of engineers do. But that's the sort of the digerati. The digerati know that these things are quite comparable across the field. The people you're talking to as customers are still very early in the process, and they only want to go with something that's proven. Oh, by the way, back in the day, there was only one real major player in the world of CRM, and it was called Siebel, right? And then along came Salesforce.com, right? And displaced Siebel, killed it. Okay, the same thing can happen to OpenAI on a faster timeline.
Yeah.
If somebody comes along with something that is truly disruptive, and I don't know what that is, but it's possible.
And it
Well, the point in that is like what people like. Name recognition goes a fair amount, but so does, are they happy where they are? Right? Like a ton of people use Microsoft. I don't hear like, oh, we're so excited about Microsoft. We love Microsoft. And in fact, the thing that I hear when people are like, no, we're going to stay with Microsoft, is that they're like, I don't want to spend that much time learning something else. Right? So there is some opportunity if you create something that is easier to use. And as Gwen pointed out, like there's a trust and security factor too. Those things need to be answered. But
all right,
hey guys, can I jump in with a quick news announcement that may not have been covered before?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, so I just read on TechCrunch earlier. So if you'll remember when one of the big Google events recently, and one of the things they showed you was the AI overviews, where you would search for something and it would give you recipes and shopping lists, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know where you guys are. I'm not really seeing that in Google at the moment here, but TechCrunch announced that Google's actually going to start showing ads in AI overviews, which was bound to happen. I think obviously one of the big concerns is that ChatGPT and Perplexity are starting to eat into their share, and Google's certainly, from a marketing perspective, Google's definitely struggled in the last year plus since ChatGPT came out. So it's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to it. And yeah, well, I think I actually saw something the other day also with Perplexity might be doing some kind of deal where you can buy stuff in the
Karl was talking about that.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm not seeing any of it locally in Australia. I don't know if any of you guys are seeing some of that stuff over there yet.
I haven't. Not on Google's side, at least. I know Beth was talking about seeing some one-click buying stuff, which isn't, I guess, really ads, sort of. Maybe, I don't know if that's in the same hour. That is definitely something we're, Karl was saying Perplexity ads. It's definitely something I think we're going to pick back up on a upcoming show and now it sounds like we can pull in the Google stuff as well if there's new news on that. Because that's going to be a big area for sure, like advertising and AI and how does that all mesh well together, because that really does change the way Google has done things previously. And with newcomers like Perplexity and how they're approaching it too, it's going to be really interesting. Okay, listen, we're going to wrap things up for today. Thanks for everybody in the comments. Holy moly, we have a lot of comments today. Thanks, Matichek. Good to see you again in here. And I also want to call out, oh man, I have to scroll back so far. Mike, thanks for hanging out with us as well. I saw your comment on LinkedIn. He says, I want to bring this up really quick. I want to see it at the level of the scene of Hunger Games where they had a room with engineers working at a console that quickly creates and manipulates the environments. Question is, which company will get there first? I like that. I just want to make sure I brought that up. So thanks, Mike, for hanging out with us from the LinkedIn side of the world, as well as everybody on YouTube as well. That'll do it for today. Don't forget, you can go to dailyaishow.com, sign up for our newsletter there. It will go out Sunday morning. We're now up to, edition number 17 or something like that. So been doing it for a few months. Really, really proud of it. It's free, obviously. And if you like what we're talking about on this show, then I pretty much promise you're going to like the newsletter as well. Just a little bit different format and kind of gives you a little bit more than we're able to handle, believe it or not, in the 5 shows we do every week. So that's it for us. Eran, always good to see you. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Hope everything's well in Perth. And we will see everybody back here bright and early on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Aloha.